In January of this year, Google co-founder Sergey Brin made his first major political donation. After he wrote a $20 million check to start a new super PAC, more million-dollar checks started flowing in from other Silicon Valley heavyweights. So what was it about this moment that moved Brin to get involved in politics for the first time? Why now?
Mr. Brin, you are worth $245 billion. Start paying your fair share of taxes.
A proposed tax on billionaires living in California is gaining national attention.
I mean, how many yachts do you need? They just keep getting wealthier and wealthier, and us on the bottom are just getting stuck with more debt.
When Sergey Brin wrote that $20 million check, he was responding to an unprecedented political moment.
We will deliver universal child care for the many by taxing the wealthiest few.
At a moment of skyrocketing costs for healthcare, utilities, and groceries, a group of labor unions in California are making a bet with huge stakes.
The 214 or 15 billionaires in California collectively have $2.2 trillion worth of wealth, which is just an unimaginable amount of money. What we've proposed is a one-time 5% tax on their worldwide assets that will produce $100 billion.
So we went to California to find out, is a wealth tax key to solving the state's problems? Or is it the first domino that could take down the fourth largest economy in the world?
You would see a significant reduction in taxes because taxpayers will move.
What can the fight over California's wealth tax tell us about the problems our country faces and how to solve them? At first glance, an elementary school outside of Boston might seem like a strange place to go to better understand a wealth tax in California. But once you understand what's going on here, it becomes more clear.
8 years ago, school breakfast was stigmatized. Our breakfast program, we served maybe 2% of students.
But on this day in Watertown, Massachusetts, just outside Boston, every kid gets free breakfast. Same with lunch, and same at every public school across the state.
Here you go, Caitlin. Hi, Francesca. Hi, good, how are you?
That's because back in 2022, the state's voters approved a ballot initiative called the Fair Share Amendment.
The proposal would require people who make over $1 million to pay 4% more in state income tax.
Across the state, 2 free meals a day at school are saving millions of families money on groceries. Better trains and buses and tuition-free community college are lowering their transportation and education bills. All of it paid for with the millionaire's tax.
Every year when Massachusetts reaffirms that we're having a free breakfast and free lunch, I breathe a sigh of relief.
Everybody in Massachusetts who was a lobbyist and a spokesperson for the wealthy, they said, oh, we're going to see an exodus, a mass exodus of the wealthy.
And these guys are going to say, okay, I'm going to go to Florida instead of staying in Massachusetts.
And it's a very legit concern.
So Massachusetts doesn't want to position itself in a way that our tax code is an impediment to economic growth.
Well, guess what? There was no mass exodus.
In fact, the number of millionaires in Massachusetts actually grew close to 40% in the 2 years after the amendment passed. Now, this same argument is being recycled in California.
It's the California gold rush in reverse.
Just talking about it is sending billionaires running.
Some reportedly ready to move their businesses and their money across the country to Florida.
This is an exodus, isn't it? You're not for a wealth tax in the state of California.
You can't isolate yourself from the 49 others. We're in a competitive environment.
Unlike the Massachusetts tax, the California proposal would tax wealth, not income. And it would apply to a much smaller group of people, the 200-odd billionaires in the state. It's also a response to one of the largest wealth transfers in the country's history.
I've been a healthcare worker for 57 years. This is the worst threat that I've ever seen.
When President Trump signed the legislation, the world changed.
Trump's signature on this bill redirected billions of dollars from Medicaid into the pockets of billionaires and corporations. So that money is now sitting in the investment portfolios of billionaires like Mark Zuckerberg and Sergey Brin instead of paying doctors and nurses and care flight pilots. It's not lowering monthly premiums for low-income folks who are dropping out of the pool and making premiums go up for the rest of us.
So I'm a phlebotomist. What brings me here today is it's pretty simple, to prevent a healthcare collapse.
In California, the cuts amount to $100 billion over 5 years.
I look back at what happened at COVID.
This ICU is over capacity.
Mass graves for those who can't afford a funeral.
It would be like seeing something of COVID, but permanent.
The Antelope Valley Medical Center has already had to close its public health clinic in response to this routing of billions from Medicare to billionaires' pockets.
If the ER closes in one town, the next town's ER is going to be overcrowded. Well, it turns out we're all in this together.
So we are in uncharted territory, and that's an unprecedented situation. Nobody has ever had to manage that before.
You can't just manufacture the dollars out of thin air. Ultimately, we are all going to pay. It is higher amounts we spend for doctor's visits, it's higher co-pays, it's higher insurance costs. It comes out of all of our pockets, one way or another.
So there's this crisis, and the question facing California was, what are you going to do about it?
If not asking the richest among us to pay, what do we do?
Well, we do. California has the most progressive tax structure in the United States of America.
There are billionaires who are sitting on equity who don't sell it
We have
and who are paying a lower
billionaires
tax rate.
that are paying those progressive taxes. We have the highest progressive tax rate in the United States of America.
It is true, California has relatively high personal income taxes. Those are meaningless to billionaires.
The income that you earn at your job, or that I earn by going out in public and begging strangers to talk to me.
We're working on a video about the billionaire tax. Do you guys want to talk about it? Do you want to talk about it? You guys want to talk about it?
No, not really.
Okay. Hey guys.
We can see how much of it comes out every paycheck in the form of state income taxes. We can also definitely see the impact of taxes on gas and other necessities.
I might move to out of state because we have to pay taxes for everything. Gas on it is tax. Everything.
I'm hearing you say it's that the tax burden right now is falling on working people too much.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what they're doing to us.
But billionaires like Mark Zuckerberg, they get paid differently. He famously takes a $1 annual salary from Facebook, but he mostly gets paid in the form of shares of his company's stock. And if he never sells those shares, he never has to pay taxes on them. Same with most other billionaires in California. Despite holding nearly $2 trillion in wealth, the state's billionaires only contribute about 2.5% of the state's income tax base. The vast majority of their wealth is sitting in their investment portfolios untaxed. California could raise the top income tax rate to 95% and never touch that money. That is the point of a wealth tax. In California, it would be a one-time 5% tax on an individual's net worth if it's over $1 billion. And it can be helpful to deal in physical objects here since these fortunes are so huge. This is a super yacht. One of these costs about $500 million. If Mark Zuckerberg were to convert his entire fortune into super yachts, he would have 444.6 of them. If the wealth tax passes, Zuckerberg would be left with a measly 422 super yachts. In the 4 odd months it took for me to research, report, travel, and produce this video, Mark Zuckerberg's wealth, just sitting in its investment portfolio, has already grown by the amount he would be asked to pay.
5% if they're billionaires. When their wealth is growing 7% a year is almost a rounding error.
But many of these billionaires are still spending millions to try to defeat this tax, and already taking steps to try to get out of it.
Businesses are fleeing California.
And it's going to cause a mass exodus.
This wealth tax is having a huge impact on people fleeing to Florida.
It's a badly drafted effort. It's already had an outsized impact on this state.
Okay, to be clear, we're talking about 6 people. 6 billionaires who have told reporters that they either purchased real estate or incorporated LLCs outside of California. Plus, the proposal covers any billionaire who was a resident of California as of January 1st this year, So if they haven't taken steps already, it's too late. Recent polling shows that a majority of Californians favor the tax, but also that they're concerned that they will have to fit the bill if the billionaires flee. And the measure's opponents are spending millions to try to push this scare tactic to the public. It's an argument that sounds pretty similar to that of the governor, Gavin Newsom, and there might be a reason for that. Former Google CEO Eric Schmidt, Tony Zhu, CEO of DoorDash, Patrick Collison, CEO of Stripe. These billionaires have all contributed the maximum amount to Gavin Newsom's campaigns in previous cycles. As have other California billionaires like Reed Hastings, co-founder of Netflix, who also incidentally cut a $250,000 check to stop Zohran Mamdani from becoming mayor of New York. Taxing the ultra-rich was a huge part of Mamdani's campaign, and California billionaires took notice and started spending to try to stop him. Now, those same billionaires are counting on their years-long investment in Gavin Newsom. And it looks like it's paying off.
What would a compromise look like to you?
I don't know what there is to compromise.
Altogether, Newsom has received financial support from 50 of the state's billionaires and their spouses. And in a state with roughly 200 billionaires, that's not a drop in the bucket. As Newsom positions himself as a 2028 presidential contender, those same billionaires are now funding that effort through a couple of newly formed federal PACs. A sizable portion of Newsom's billionaire backers come from the tech sector, which is an important part of California's economy.
Your home is beautiful.
Thank you.
Do you think that you guys would also too leave California if the billionaire tax passed?
I think that is our big fear. It's sort of the nightmare. We're kind of going through the phases of denial, acceptance, grief, however you call it.
These guys are betting that doom and gloom projections about billionaire founders being forced to sell their super voting shares and potentially losing control of their companies will be enough to scare voters into rejecting the proposal.
It shouldn't be too difficult if on paper you're worth several $1 billion to come up with your tax payment without, selling shares or doing some dramatic thing.
There's even a special provision for startups that would allow their founders to delay paying the tax until after their company goes public.
We're trying to make it as easy and reasonable as possible. We're not trying to cause a liquidity problem for these billionaires. We're not trying to cause them to sell shares when they don't want to. We're just trying to use reasonable modern tools in order to close a gap.
Human rights!
And sure, billionaire-backed PACs are already spending big to try to defeat this proposal. But the billionaire class solidarity might not be as strong as you'd think. This is an interview with Jensen Huang, CEO of NVIDIA and one of the California billionaires who would be subject to the wealth tax.
Is it something that's of concern to you?
I gotta tell you, I haven't thought about it even once. We work in Silicon Valley because that's where the talent pool is, and whatever taxes I guess they would like to apply, so be it. I'm perfectly fine with it. It never crossed my mind once.
For Huang, a one-time 5% tax is a small price to pay to live in a region where his business can recruit the most highly skilled workers. It's a perspective that mirrors that of the working Californians who I spoke with.
Billionaires are making their money off the backs of our public infrastructure. And so we need to make sure that they are paying their fair share for the resources that they are using.
They are making a lot of revenue on workers and working families in the state. And if they cannot help with the 5% to help the workers that are making their businesses thrive, then see you later.
Why are we doing this? We are doing this because on July 4th of last year, President Trump signed a piece of legislation that's going to take $1 trillion out of the U.S. healthcare system. And that money is being moved to the richest people in the country.
Affordable healthcare, universal childcare, free school meals for every kid. These are not radical concepts. They're a part of everyday life in many parts of the world. But it took decades of work and 5 failed attempts before the millionaire's tax became a reality in Massachusetts. Billionaire PACs are already pouring money into California to defeat this proposal. These things do not just become a part of everyday life. Not without a fight. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. Couple of quick things. First off, towards the end of the edit for this video, we actually found out that Sergey Brin has increased his donation substantially. He's now up to $45 million spent to try to defeat this California wealth tax. Second thing, we did reach out to Governor Gavin Newsom's team to ask if they wanted to add anything or clarify on his position on the wealth tax. They wrote back that in part, this is not something a single state can deal with, that there needs to be a national conversation about more progressive taxation, and that the governor is open to the idea of a federal or national wealth tax. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to get more Perfect Union in your feed, and drop us a line if you have ideas for what we should investigate next. You can do that at stories@perfectunion.us. Thanks again.